This video is about how I set up parts and equipment to run a air-fuel ratio test, and adjust my carburetors on a Vincent motorcycle. I believe it could be used for any air-cooled V-twin motor, the same procedures and the same equipment, but I'm not positive, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. While I assume that the viewer has a sense of air-fuel ratios and things like that, and is interested in specific information, in case you don't understand all that, I'll make a point that typically, if you use manufacturers' carburetor settings, or carburetor settings in this case, your air-fuel ratios are going to be pretty good if everything is stock. It's when you go away from stock for any reason, you change the exhaust, you change the carburetors, you change the airbox, you do something that affects the engine's performance and power. So that's when you may want to adjust your air-fuel ratios. And I will say this, I changed from standard AML carburetors to OCO PWK. They're a copy of a PWK by Keehan. So I changed carburetors, and I knew I was going to need to know the air-fuel ratio so I can get it straight, get it running correctly and properly. To measure air-fuel ratio, you need a meter, and I used a AEM wideband oxygen air-fuel meter. This is just the instrument face. The other one is on the motorcycle right now to be used as testing. Anyway, that's it does lambda testing if you need that. Similar to air-fuel ratio testing, but a little different. And it does data logging. So if you need to record the data that you're capturing, it will do it for you. So comes with a really magnificent manual. It uses a Bosch LSU 4.9 oxygen sensor. Gives you the appropriate readings at different levels, what you're doing. Gives you the information on mounting it. So all that is included for the price of admission. They have options. If you want a weldless, let me point this out. This is a bung, oxygen sensor bung, threaded for the oxygen sensor with a 18 millimeter by 1 millimeter thread. You drill a hole in your exhaust system, close as you can get it. Well, within not less than 18 inches away from the exhaust port, but fairly close is important. You want it close. Anyway, this welds into your exhaust pipe, and I'll show you that. I'll show you what I'm doing. So they have one that you don't have to weld. It's a strap-on thing. Apparently it works pretty good. It's like $40. They have other options, like a cover for the instrument if you were going to use it on a motorcycle riding around in the rain. It's a waterproof cover. So what I wanted to show you is this is like an interface. I made this a number of years ago for a Venture, Yamaha Venture, which had a small exhaust tube coming out of the individual cylinders, and then it went into a collector, and so I made this up. It just threads, it's aluminum, and it threads in. There's no welded bung on this, but this is a sensor, an oxygen sensor. But okay, so I did something similar for the Vincent, and whatever. Is that thread? It's crooked. But that's so you could put it between the muffler and the two pipes coming out of the cylinders. I also, to do the tuning, I use a synchrometer airflow balancer. so that I know the air going through each of the two carburetors is balanced. A lot of people use vacuum gauges, and this is kind of a vacuum gauge, but it goes off the mouth of the carburetor, and the Vincent does not have vacuum ports in the air tract. So rather than get complicated, I just use this, get the carburetors balanced so that they're even and the engine is idling or is air is coming into it in a balanced fashion, and I'm good. I also use, because the engine is stationary, in my case, I use a thermal temperature thermometer. Maybe you'll see this. What's that enough to do? Oh, forget the trigger. Okay, so anyway, it gives you the temperature of the cylinder heads. You want to keep them cool. Well, under 340 degrees for sure. 200 degrees is fine. 250 degrees is kind of okay. I also use a fan to cool the engine. This just plugs into a 110 volt thing. I blow it across the sides of the engine, not the front. But it helps maintain the temperature, keep it from getting too hot again. For my purposes, I also use a tachometer, particularly for recording. I like to know that I'm idling or I'm revving at a certain speed, because your power, engine air fuel requirements vary according to how the engine is being used, and having a tachometer helps you determine kind of what range you're in. That is, idle and just off idle cruise, steady state cruise, require like 13.5 parts of air to 1 part of fuel, and wide open requires like wide open throttle going up a hill, maybe 12 to 1 air fuel. So I use these for my testing purposes. I actually have, because my ignition is different, I'm not using this inductive thing. This worked well with the, well, more or less well. When I had the Lucas Magneto on it, I'm now using an electronic ignition that it doesn't work with. So I'm using a different tachometer. I'll show you that setup in a minute, and I'll show you how I have the camera set up so that you can watch, or that I could watch, the air fuel ratios change and the RPM as the RPM changes. Kind of useful stuff. So next on to the next phase where I show you the camera setup. So this is the actual set of gauges that I'm using. This is the AEM air fuel ratio with white face. This is a tachometer, Harley tachometer that is electronic. Picks up a signal from the ignition, from the Vincent Power Arc ignition. And here I'm using ram mounts that attach to the handlebar. Well, that's not a ram mount, but and then an extension bar, and this little housing, little receptor here, is for a tiny little 808 style pocket camera or key fob camera, and that records both RPM and air fuel mixture as the engine is running. And in the next segment you'll see that working. So this is a voiceover of my video that I took showing the air fuel mix as the engine is being run. And then what you'll see now as it warms up, I'll begin adjusting. First I'll balance the carburetors for flow, and at the same time I'll be changing the pilot circuit mixture with the air screw that's on the side of these carburetors. All carburetors don't have that, so your mileage may vary. Here's the synchrometer going on. I'm checking the front carb, and now the back carb. Something you might want to know is that these are new carburetors, and I've already tested them and determined that the pilot jet, as delivered by the Oco company, was a little bit fat, a little bit rich, and I changed it smaller size, and it's a lot closer now. Still might be a little bit on the lean side, running a little bit far, but this can be adjusted both by changing the slide, changing the idle speed, and opening and closing that air vent. And that's what I'm doing here. I have access to the meters you're looking at in the upper right corner, and I'm saying that, yeah, it's 14, now it's dropped down to 13, 14, and the idle is at a decent point, about 750 maybe 800, hard to know. The way the thing is set up, I don't know what the 0 point is, but it came up a little bit. Okay, but now the airfield mix is looking a little better, and I give it a little bump there. The thing about changing your air fuel mix is that so many things will affect it. And you can see that I haven't changed any parts other than the ones that I mentioned. And the fuel mixture changes, and now he's down to 13, 12.5, places like that. So sometimes you have to change the needle, raise it up a little bit, or drop it down a little bit. Sometimes you have to change float level, and sometimes you change jets. All depends on what you're doing and what's needed. So this is pretty good. I'm going to hang it up now. Signing off. Thanks for watching.